Hello, everyone. This is the Healing Grapevine Network, and today I have Ramona Melvin from healinggrapevine.com, releaseandrecover.com, and so many other websites on the network that I would be amiss to try to um, list them all here. Thank you so much for joining us today, Ramona.
Thank you.
Let's
Glad
talk,
to be here.
let's talk a little bit about your background for your audience. I know that there are literally thousands of people listening to us. So today we're going to talk about um, lungs and the air pollution and some GMO stuff and a few other things, and even better yet, what to do about it. But tell me a little bit about your background. We know that you're famous for helping a lot of people in the area of, what can I say, legally. Um,
Re Releasing and recovering.
yeah, that could be anything. So tell me.
Well, yeah, so myself, I've been a health and wellness coach my entire life, all kinds of personal training and physical therapy and body work practices on my quote resume. But the thing that's current and what I'm really working with today is the fact that in 2003, I contracted Lyme disease. And it was very debilitating and the worst. I can't even, anyone who has it, they'll go, "Oh, I know right what she's talking about." The pain and the inflammation and the just complete halt to a normal vital life that that disease condition has. Unfortunately, most people turn to a conventional medical community that's undereducated. It's very difficult to find what they call a Lyme literate doctor. And when you do, they really like the high antibiotic dose cocktail. And for me, that was not an alternative that I wanted to take. So I began the research and self-knowledge path of working with naturopaths and alternative practitioners to regain my health. And then in 2009, what I prefer calling a hypertoxic syndrome, but it's also being coined Morgellons, was the next health condition that just showed up for me. I was definitely contaminated with nanomaterials, genetically modified organisms, biopesticides, heavy metals, layers and layers and layers of toxicity that cause that kind of a skin condition outbreak. And so that's when I went the next step of research to understand more the real fundamental principles to our health and our biology. Because again, I wasn't going to go the conventional route with antibiotics and chemical medical treatment. I wanted to be able to know at the end of my recovery program that I hadn't compromised my liver and my kidneys. And the science and medical research says that most of the time we can kill off the disease, but there's also a side effect and a compromise to our health condition. It is hard on our immune system to do those kinds of practices, and yet I'm that's just the choice I made. So for myself, I'm a real advocate to learning and discovering the foods that will help us detoxify and heal, the remedies that are out there, the healing modalities like far infrared that are all naturally enhancing our own ability as vital people to be alive and strong in our immune systems again. So
Okay. All right, so let's jump right into the topics today that you wanted to discuss, not to move you on too quickly, but that was pretty clear. You actually did medically and toxicologically validate as positive for Morgellons or nanotechnology. It would be probably more accurate, correct?
correct. I
Okay.
definitely had the nanomaterial toxicity, the heavy metal toxicities, and some strange genetic envelopes is one of the terms used. And what that's about is in the genetic, in the GMO and the gene altering biotech industry, they are using all kinds of virulent and pathogenic vehicles to deliver different types of medicines and vaccines and things. And there's a shedding that happens that then leaves behind strange atypical markers in a lot of people, which is why they can't quite figure out, do I have lupus? Do I have Epstein-Barr? Do I have MS?
Hmm.
Because this shedding of the genetic material that they're using for delivery systems then confuses the body and confuses the immune system, and it just doesn't even know what to do with this stuff,
Okay.
especially at the nano level.
Yeah, we'll get into that, and we have a lot more shows coming, and we also have some from the past where Ramona talks quite a bit about this. So let's go ahead and move on to today's topic, shall we?
Yes,
So there's
please.
several links that were the link library for today's topic. And moving to the first one, you sent our team the article "Lung Disease and Respiratory Health." Let's go ahead and get into that. Like, where are you going with this? What's your concern? What do you want to address for our listeners?
Well, the reason that I wanted to talk about lungs today is because as we continue in the news reading about and understanding the air quality and what is going on, whether it be geoengineering and chemtrail activity, or it's bad air because of mold and the sick building syndrome in the air conditioning and heating duct systems, people sitting all day long in their offices breathing this bad air in, or even, like genetically modified organisms in pollen that are now, all of this is airborne activity. And the trouble about airborne vectors is that you really can't control them unless we, all got into a hazmat suit and walked around in the boy in the bubble. Really, that's, the only way to ensure the most clean air quality environment. Now, that's not practical for us. But what I want everybody to understand is that the lungs happen to be the body's largest organ and surface for exposure to hazardous materials and pathogens.
Huh, interesting.
Yes, a lot of people don't realize that those folds inside the lung, when they get stretched out, they have this huge volume of surface area. So every breath we're taking, potentially, we're being exposed to chemicals, gases in the air, nanoparticles. Of course, we know about pollens and being allergic to that kind of stuff. And the fact is, anything in the air can become an irritant for us. So
Okay.
every time we're inhaling, we possibly are getting infected or contaminated. And of course, it doesn't just stop in the lungs. The lungs are, the blood comes along and picks up the O2 out of the lung and all the other materials that might possibly be in there, and it distributes it throughout the body. So, how can we protect ourselves from something as difficult as clean air or bad air? I mean, how can we protect ourselves from something potentially hazardous like, the other day I was walking down the street and I was smelling something before I got near. I realized I was walking near an auto body shop and they were doing some kind of treatment on a car that was very noxious. I mean, you could identify it right away. And so, I sort of did selective breathing, turned and ran the other direction. But the truth is, most of the time we cannot smell or recognize when we're being contaminated by something.
Which brings us to our next topic. You have a fairly strong position on geoengineering and chemtrails. You also sent us links on Dr. Russell Blaylock from the National Health Federation. And let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, I know it's kind of radical to get into your position about chemtrails because it's very polarized and becoming more so. What do
Yeah.
you want to talk about?
Well, the
That
reason
being said, uh-huh.
the reason I sent that link was because I was very interested in who wrote the article.
Russell
Uh,
Blaylock wrote it.
right. And
He's a neurosurgeon, retired neurosurgeon.
yeah, when you look at his quote
Bio,
credentials,
his bio.
pedigree bio, he's a real guy. He's had a long, long history in the medical community. And this is, someone of quote authority
He
who's
went to
standing up.
LSU.
Okay.
Yeah, just I'm letting the audience know, LSU School of Medicine.
And he's standing up and saying, listen, I have a major concern. There is evidence that they're spraying nano-sized aluminum compounds in the skies as some kind of weather modification geoengineering strategy. And what's happening is that there are now testing and finding that these nanoparticles have an effect on the brain and the spinal cord, and that it's adding to the growing list of issues we have in the neurodegenerative diseases. Alzheimer's is increasing, Parkinson's is increasing, Lou Gehrig's disease, and they're all related to exposure to the environmental aluminum. Now, again, back to in the medical community, they're starting to call these things atypical because they just can't really understand why there's such an increase in the presentation of these diseases. And yet, this is the troubling question I always ask. If the medical community is doing their job, how come we're still having an increase in every single one of these major chronic and acute
Let's
conditions?
let's go ahead and take a quote from the National Health Federation, of which I know nothing about or who it's funded by, but I will say that they're claiming here, based on the chemtrail, my major concern is that there is evidence. This is by Dr. Blaylock. There is evidence that they are spraying tons of nano-sized aluminum compounds. He says tons of nano-sized aluminum compounds. It has been demonstrated in the scientific and medical literature that nano-sized particles are infinitely more reactive and induce intense inflammation in a number of tissues. He mentions Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and Lou Gehrig's.
Right, right. And
Okay.
so,
But
and
that's what
and
you're addressing today.
that's what I'm addressing. And what's particularly potent about this contamination vector is the nano-size material or particulates that these are, because they do not get filtered out by normal air filtering systems. They are apparently able to sort of go under the radar screen in our immune system. Our immune system doesn't even detect them until there's this huge tipping point, which is why I really believe Morgellons has become such a broad pandemic of issue, and we're not even sure, we don't feel it until all of a sudden it's so overwhelmed our system that our skin exudes strange rashes and materials and causes lesions that don't heal well. Now there's a lot of factors there. We're just staying with the nanomaterial for a moment, and the point being that that nano size flies under the radar screen to our immune system. Our immune system is not detecting it until we are in such an overwhelming polluted level that our skin starts to tell us something's wrong.
So from what you just said, it sounds to me that it's pretty clear that you're one of those folks who believe that there is a connection between Morgellons and chemtrails. Are you kind of out with that, or is that
I am
something?
out with that. I
Oh,
do believe I do
oh,
believe that
okay.
that's a one of the
That's a
factors.
pretty radical view.
Well, it was certainly the case for me.
Well, how do
I
you know that it was the case?
Because of I did test out having nano anchors, smart
But I'm
dust.
asking you for the connection between geoengineering and that. How do you know that that was the case?
Well, because I do not take large doses of medicines, really never have my whole life. When I was a child with my mom and dad, they would give me antibiotics, a couple of times a year for this or that strep throat kind of thing. But as an adult, I never reached for antibiotics or prescription medicines or pain medicines. See, now the biomedical field is the other place that's rampant with using nanoparticles and nanomaterials
Hmm.
in their research and in their technology.
True.
I didn't have that exposure vector. So,
Hmm.
it is sort of a backwards, try to go start from behind and reconstruct backwards as to what was my contamination. However, the big ones are the nanoparticles being sprayed in the air, the prescriptive medicines that are out there on the market. Even the over-counter medicines have a lot of nanomaterials in them.
Okay.
And none of those were, the only thing that was significant for me was moving to Phoenix and having a huge amount of chemtrail activity happen.
Yeah. It's for those who believe in chemtrails, it is definitely the most checkerboarded uh, town that I personally have ever seen.
Yeah, it's
Yeah. So let's go ahead and
dramatic.
I'm going to go ahead and shift gears a little bit back to more of a positive side, a solution-oriented side. Not that anything that you were saying was negative, but it is kind of intense for people just joining us because we have a lot of people that have never heard our material before and the rest. So Let's talk. One of the things that I know about you is that you have a real hierarchy of incredibly powerful tools. In fact, we're showing right now on the screen the release and recover site. That's got a few of your snippets that I've learned from you over the years and the rest. One of the things that I know is at the absolute top of your hierarchy, and we're on this screen right now, is the patented far infrared, the great secret, where you give your lecture on electromagnetic waves and the relationship of mid, far, and near, mid, far infrared. It was a very, very popular presentation that you brought far infrared to the ordinary people. And the non-scientists, it was really a great explanation for those of us who are maybe not, not super rigorous. So tell me a little bit about far infrared, because we are going to get into a really inexpensive solution for people at the end of this call. We're going to talk about the essential oil that is the only one that you've chosen out of hundreds of oils to help with all these issues. But can you tell us a little bit, like, why, like, honestly, when I talk to you about far infrared, it's one of those don't get you started things. So just give us, like, in a nutshell, like, why this is the most important thing in your recovery for all these nano nasties that you mentioned.
Well, far infrared as a therapy tool, the saunas, the heating pads, the rainbow units that I now have one of everything. Those were very, very effective in stimulating really deep microcirculation at the cellular level in the body. And it was a tool that I could use at a time when I was overwhelmed with brain fog, overwhelmed with chronic fatigue. I could barely get my kids to go to school and then go sit in a corner and just kind of stare off and drool for a while when I was quite sick. When I found the far infrared modality, the sauna, and I started using it, it was literally like I was getting exercise again without having to expend the vital energy, the very little chi or life force that I had at the time. There was no way I was going to go out and exercise. But using the far infrared therapy was, in a sense, exactly like the benefits of exercising, stimulating that deep circulation, the terrain to release, flushing them out, as well as rebuilding and revitalizing with proper nourishment for everything that I did, whether it was eating better or taking a mineral supplement or an essential oil, was quantified. There was a measurable increase of efficacy using any of those supplements or other modalities with the far infrared, because the far infrared helped deliver it so deeply into the body.
Okay. And if I
And
was to ask you, just as somebody like who's maybe not rich right now, um, if can I, if I'm concerned about chemtrail and hypertoxicity and these things, can I pick up one of those far infrared pads for 300 or 400 bucks and that'll tide me over until I have access to a sauna, or is that something I can do?
absolutely. Absolutely. I can say that there isn't anybody really that hands back this product saying, I didn't like
No,
it.
I certainly you would have to pull mine out of my cold dead hands, which would be
Well,
impossible because I'd be warm from the far infrared. Okay. Hey,
that's exactly it.
we
And
actually
even the heating pad can be very effective at targeting, especially conditions like brain fog, sinus infections. Again, back to what we're talking about today, the airborne
Yep, yep. And
toxicities.
just a quickie here, I want to insert because it's been very important for folks watching that this screen that I'm on now that shows Ramona talking. She's actually in Sedona talking about on the river, talking about the far infrared pad. This is a great unit for those of you who can't afford giant things. It's portable and go with you where you want to go, and the investment will last you quite a while. Um, we do have a couple of other things that you were leading to, Ramona, in your conversation. Do you want to continue going along that lines where we were going to talk about GMO and wheat? Because
Yes.
I don't really understand the connection between that and air really directly. So you'll have to tell me why you wanted to discuss the recent Natural News article.
Yeah, well, for me, the obvious reason to bring this article to light today is because this article is discussing the contamination that's happening in fields that are within 100 miles or hundreds of miles of a GMO planted
Aha,
field.
okay. So it's the airborne particulates from a more farming or agricultural thing that you're kind of jumping to.
Exactly. And farmers are screaming at the top of their lungs, you are contaminating my fields. There's nothing they can do to protect from it because,
Air
again,
rights. Nobody owns the air rights except
exactly.
Monsanto.
Yeah. And that's very alarming, but we won't go down that conversation today. I just wanted to make the point that, right now there's a huge battle globally with Monsanto, and all countries except apparently the US and Canada
Yeah,
aren't quite.
you sent me an article. You sent me an article the other day that was quite good, just to throw in some super positive light and maybe a little bit of faith in the human race. Um, that South Korea, when this happened, Monsanto stocks have taken a huge hit. You know,
Right. I mean, the good news is that the reason we might be able to, quote, win the war with Monsanto is because strictly economy. The rest of the world is going to say, we're sorry, we are not buying your wheat, grain, or seeds any longer,
yeah,
US,
we don't
because they're
buy it. Yeah,
contaminated.
yeah, and we're starting to not buy it here as well, believe it or not.
Right.
So it's kind of
Right.
really interesting. Okay, so I get that. We're counting down on the time now. We only have about 5 minutes left. So let's go ahead and move to, through this conversation, connect it all back to lungs. And then I really, really want to make sure you have plenty of time to talk about the essential oil that I have my bottle right here. I want everybody to know about it.
Yes, this essential oil was again part of that protocol that I discovered with the far infrared, and I used it faithfully every time I went into the far infrared sauna. And even today, I don't get in my sauna maybe, I don't know, a couple of times a month as sort of a boost. I do have my far infrared heating pad and rainbow everywhere in the
Well, the
room.
truth is that you can't get in your sauna because everybody in the whole neighborhood of Prescott is now using it at the apothecary, where she actually lets people use it, and there's no time for any of us to use it because the whole neighborhood comes there now.
Yeah, that's pretty wonderful. I'm very excited about being able to provide that to this local community.
Hmm.
And then, so back to the essential oil. I don't go anywhere without that thing in my purse. I use it, as they say, neat, meaning directly taking a drop or two onto my finger, and I rub it into the lymph glands that are right up underneath the jaw, neck, where your tonsils are. And when you get a sore throat and you get swollen tonsils and lymph glands, you can feel them get noduled up right under that jawline.
Hmm.
I put this on every day. Anytime I walk by the bottle, I've got a bottle in my kitchen, I got a bottle in my bathroom, and I got a bottle in my purse. So, when I,
Also,
yeah,
the connection to weight loss I always found pretty interesting as well. Really does seem to have an effect with that, huh?
yes, I like to tell the story about a gal who got a hold of it, and I swear she was bathing in it straight. I had to tell her to quit because,
Get
uh,
out of it.
well, it's something it's very powerful formulation. It's technically a hot formulation
Yeah, it's a little. You don't want to get it in your eyes, I've noticed.
no,
Yeah.
but that hot is the that formulation is because that's how it's helping unlock the fat stores from the toxic levels that they have.
Right.
And there's an interesting research about how for folks who have, they've had belly fat or, fat somewhere stored and their whole life and they just never seem to be able to get that part off. The possibility that it's because it's literally locked in toxicity is the reason that that fat tissue can't open up yet. So this remedy was also developed to help with that facilitation, to open those tissues deep in the fat cells, deep in their toxicity, and get them to let go of those stores. That's what fat's job is to store. And unfortunately, the more GMO food we eat, the more toxins we come into contact with, whether it's on the skin, in our food, in the air. Our fat's job is to say, oh, we can handle that. We'll take care of it. We'll try to protect you by encapsulating it in the fat. So that's why it's also known as a fat burning remedy.
Yeah.
But for today, what I'm really talking about is I don't need to lose any fat. I still use it confidently. It's not going to make me get skinny. It's not unhealthy that way. I use it to, again, help forego any um, possible exposure that's going on in the air, whether it be, my kids bringing home even strep throat or, common flu. We haven't had a common cold or a flu bug in years since I started using this remedy. And I'm sure that the essential oil has become a big part of it. It's also very, very popular in Europe because a lot of the protocol that we've developed and recommend at the Healing Grapevine, some of those supplements, either they're not translatable, someone can't find it and understand it in Romanian, or they can't find it in Australia or Spain. And these folks, they buy the oils because it is a very effective detox remedy. It's sort of a one-two punch. If you only had a few dollars to spend, it would definitely be one of those products I would buy and have with me all the time. So it's very
I
popular.
was trying to find for folks one of your fitness model shots from Fitness Magazine and the rest because you have a huge background in health and wellness. Here's an old shot of you from Fitness Magazine. And just give people a little bit of background because sometimes they discover the fact that you were a pretty well-known international health and fitness model. And
It's
and that's something I don't, normally when we're giving interviews, we don't mention that you have a huge background in health and wellness training and
yes.
fitness training. So I just wanted to throw that in there and give you a little kudos there for that. Also, I would like to mention to everyone that I've noticed that the Inner Solutions is now being purchased quite a bit by the survivalist and the homesteading communities
Mm.
as a one of those things to toss in your bug out bag, which I thought was kind of cool. We couldn't figure out where all the sales are coming from, and now it seems to be that it's kind of caught on for that. So that's another thing for you to consider. Well, here's the thing, Ramona. We probably should wrap this up. This has been quite, it's time flies when you're having fun, but this is moving on a half an hour now, and that's getting
Oh
a little
yeah.
bit too long.
Yeah.
So we want to thank everybody for joining Ramona in the Ramona 30-minute rant, and we're going to be doing these rants probably every 2 weeks or something like that. And we're going to also answer the most important questions that come in because we have a huge mailbag of stuff that Ramona just honestly can't answer every single thing. I do want to make a note, as I'm supposed to, that if you want to create a phone appointment, the best place to do that is go to releaseandrecover.com, and then you'll have all the information that you need to do to set up a phone non-medical. What are you calling it?
Consult,
Yeah,
vitality
it's a vitality
consulting.
consulting. Yeah,
I mean, we all want to look better, feel better. We've all
yeah.
got the reasons why we're not today, and some of those solutions are so simple.
hmm
So I really enjoy helping folks release and recover.
And if you have any questions on the sauna specifically, we get a lot of calls, phone calls, and emails on saunas. Please do not hesitate to use the telephone number or the email is better on the site, and Ramona or somebody on staff will follow up with you on these topics.
Or come get one in Prescott, Arizona.
Okay. All right. Okay, so this has been the Healing Grapevine Network 30-minute rant, and we will hopefully see you on the inside of your next sauna.
Thank you.